In 2003, Lego was losing $1 million every single day. The beloved toy company, the one that had shaped childhoods for generations, was drowning in $800 million of debt. Private equity firms were circling. Bankruptcy was no longer a question of if, it was a question of when. And then a 35-year-old former kindergarten teacher walked into the boardroom and told everyone, "We are on a burning platform. We are running out of cash, and we will likely not survive." That man saved Lego, and the way he did it was the opposite of what anyone expected. This is the story of how the world's most beloved toy company almost destroyed itself by trying to do too much. Lego's story begins in 1932 in a small carpentry workshop in Billund, Denmark. A carpenter named Ole Kirk Christiansen had lost most of his business during the Great Depression. Hardly anyone was buying furniture, so he started carving little wooden toys, ducks, trucks, yo-yos, just to survive. He named his company Lego from the Danish words leg godt, meaning play well. He carved a sign and hung it in his workshop. It read, "Only the best is good enough." That wasn't a slogan, it was a rule. When his son Godfred once shipped a batch of wooden ducks with only 2 coats of varnish instead of 3, Ole made him go back to the train station, bring every duck back, apply the 3rd coat, and re-ship them, even if it took him all night. Quality wasn't negotiable. It was the foundation of everything Lego would become. In 1947, Lego became the first toy company in Denmark to buy a plastic injection molding machine. It cost more than double the previous year's profits. Most people thought it was a terrible investment, but by 1958, Ole Kirk's son Godfred had perfected something extraordinary. A small plastic brick with interlocking studs on the top and hollow tubes on the bottom. It clicked together perfectly. It held firmly, and it was almost infinitely combinable. The modern Lego brick was born, and it was patented on January 28, 1958. Ole Kirk Christiansen died just 2 months later, on March 11, 1958. He never saw how far his invention would travel. For the next 4 decades, Lego grew into one of the most loved brands on Earth. By the 1990s, it was a cultural institution. Children in more than 100 countries played with Lego. The company had opened its first Legoland theme park in Billund in 1968. Its yellow minifigures, introduced in 1978, had become icons. Everything was working. The future looked limitless, and then Lego started to panic. In the late 1990s, the world changed. PlayStation arrived. The internet took off. Children stopped playing with physical toys and started staring at screens. Lego's leadership was terrified. Their response? Innovate, diversify, do more, do everything. They launched clothing lines, jewelry, action figures, video games, television shows. They opened 3 new Legoland theme parks in England, the United States, and Germany between 1996 and 2002. They created over 14,000 different brick types and elements, so many that their own factories couldn't keep track. And they started selling high-tech sets with motors and electronics for less than they cost to produce. Lego was doing everything, and in doing everything, they lost sight of the one thing that had always made them special: the brick. By 2003, the damage was catastrophic. Sales dropped 30%. The company lost over $220 million that year alone. Debt had ballooned to $800 million. Lego was bleeding $1 million every single day. The company that Ole Kirk Christiansen had built from a tiny workshop in Billund, the company that had survived the Great Depression, 2 fires, and a world war, was months from collapse. Kjeld Kirk Christiansen, the founder's grandson and the company's owner, poured 800 million kroner of his own personal fortune into Lego to keep it alive. But money alone couldn't fix what was broken. They needed someone who could see the problem clearly, someone from the outside. In 2004, Lego appointed Jørgen Vig Knudstorp as CEO. He was 35 years old. He had been a kindergarten teacher before going to university. He had a PhD in economics. He had worked at McKinsey. He had joined Lego only 3 years earlier. He was the first person from outside the founding family to ever lead the company. And the first thing he did was tell his colleagues the truth. "We are on a burning platform," he said. "We are running out of cash, and we will likely not survive." It wasn't the motivational speech anyone wanted to hear. but it was honest, and Lego needed honesty more than hope. Knudstorp's diagnosis was radical. Lego was not dying because of the internet or video games. Lego was dying because of Lego. The company had tried so hard to be everything, theme parks, clothing, media, electronics, that it had forgotten what it actually was, a brick. His plan was the opposite of innovation. It was subtraction. He cut the number of unique brick elements from over 14,000 down to around 7,000. He laid off 1,000 employees. He sold the 4 Legoland theme parks to Merlin Entertainments for $460 million. He sold a factory in Switzerland. He slashed product lines. He killed projects that didn't make money. And then he did the hardest thing of all. He went back to the brick. Simple, modular, endlessly creative. The thing that children had loved for 50 years. The turnaround was fast, and it was dramatic. By 2005, just 1 year after Knudstorp took charge, Lego returned to profitability. By 2006, operating margins had climbed from 2% back to nearly 16%. From 2004 to 2014, revenues quadrupled. In 2014, the Lego Movie grossed $471 million worldwide and generated hundreds of millions more in toy sales. In 2015, Lego surpassed Mattel to become the world's largest toy company by revenue for the first time in history. By 2024, Lego's annual revenue had reached $10.7 billion. The company that was losing $1 million a day 20 years earlier was now making tens of millions in profit every single day. And here's the part that makes the story unforgettable. Lego didn't come back by inventing something new. They came back by remembering what they already had. The brick never changed. The stud and tube system patented in 1958 still works with bricks made today. A piece from 1960 clicks into a piece from 2024. 66 years of perfect backward compatibility. While every other toy company chased trends, Lego went back to the thing that made them Lego in the first place. Old Kirk Christiansen carved a sign in his workshop 90 years ago. Only the best is good enough. He didn't mean the fanciest. He didn't mean the most complex. He meant the most true. Sometimes the best thing a company can do isn't to add more. It's to strip everything away and remember why they existed in the first place. Lego didn't survive because they became something new. They survived because they had the courage to become themselves again, one brick at a time. Remember, every fortune has a story and every story has a lesson. What other money stories should we cover? Drop your suggestions in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time.